Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to our first Friday for our IECOC youth. Tonight is an exciting night given the uniqueness of the topic. But before we do get started, there are a few things I want to mention. Firstly, in terms of announcements, inshallah on Friday the 12th, or is it a Friday or what is it, a Saturday? Saturday the 25th, we will be having our monthly Quran discussion, inshallah. We're currently discussing Surah Al-Ahzab, and we're talking a lot about the Prophet and the companions around him, and also some of the battles that happened, and we're learning a lot, alhamdulillah. So please, if you're interested in any of that, please come. They're quite beautiful talks with Sayyid Mahdi al-Qazwini. Secondly, I'm sure as you might have seen if you've been with us the past 2 years, but alhamdulillah, we've grown a lot. Over the last 2 years, through blood, sweat, and tears, we have a very lively youth session with very powerful topics. We have a very thriving community with a lot of friendships. We're having a lot of new things, like it's been going on for a while now, but we have, for example, a soccer club. And we have a lot more things hopefully planned for the horizon. But as the community grows and as we get more engagement, we also do need more help from more people. So please, if you're interested in helping out, if you want to be part of this effort, there are a lot of very wonderful volunteers who put in so much effort. But if you're also interested, just let me know, talk to me, talk to Fahad, or talk to anyone on the board. And that way, if something comes up and we need people, we can have you in mind. It can be something as simple as, for example, we're going to have a volunteer today recite Quran, or it can be maybe for much more fruitful and much more long-term things in the future. With that being said, also, we do need your donations. We need donations. If any of you are willing to sponsor or know someone who's willing to sponsor maybe a dinner for one of our youth events, talk to me, talk to Fahad, or talk to someone on the board. If you know someone who's willing to donate, a lot of us are college students, a lot of us are not yet established. If you do know someone, also please talk to them. And through these efforts, we can really improve our programs and pump up what we do. And we have, inshallah, 2024 is going to be very fruitful and very special. With that being said, let me invite one of our brothers, Mahdi Ashrafi, to come and recite Quran. Please invite him, please welcome him with a salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. I have to get you the other mic. You can do this one? You want me to switch the mics? Yeah. Can you help me switch the mics? I turned this one off. Sorry. Should I just leave this here? Oh, yeah, please. Should I just leave this here? Yeah. That's good. But that's okay? No pressure. Say this one.
That's not on it.
Not on it. Lower this? Yeah, I can fix it. You can just stand. You want to do it?
You want to lower it?
Yeah, just a little bit. That should be good. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وسيق الذين اتقوا ربهم إلى الجنة زمرًا وسيق الذين اتقوا ربهم إلى الجنة زمرًا وسيق الذين اتقوا ربهم إلى الجنة زمرًا حتى إذا جاءوها وفتحت أبوابها وقال لهم خزنتها سلام عليكم طبتم. وقال لهم خزنتها سلام عليكم طبتم فادخلوها خالدين. وقالوا الحمد لله الذي صدقنا وعده وأورثنا الأرض نتبوأ من الجنة حيث نشاء فنعم أجر العاملين. وترى الملائكة حافين من حول العرش يسبحون بحمد ربهم وقضي بينهم بالحق وقيل الحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى. والضحى والليل إذا سجى ما ودعك ربك وما قلى وللآخرة خير لك من الأولى ولسوف يعطيك ربك فترضى. ألم يجدك يتيما فآوى ووجدك ضالا فهدى ووجدك عائلا فأغنى فأما اليتيم فلا تقهر وأما السائل فلا تنهر وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. وأما بنعمة ربك فحدث. لا إله إلا الله والله أكبر ولله الحمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم نشرح لك صدرك ووضعنا عنك وزرك الذي أنقذ ظهرك ورفعنا لك ذكرك صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل.
Really quick before we get started, everyone please take a chance to scan the QR code above my head. This will lead you to our Google form. Does this still have an echo? How do I turn off the echo? But,
Takes two people.
Yeah, I got this one.
okay, does this still have an echo? Okay, it doesn't. All right, yeah, so really quick, please take a chance to scan the QR code above my head. This will take you to a Google form where you can give us your phone number, you can give us your email, so you won't only need, you can stay up to date on what our events are and any upcoming events and any other information we'd like to share with you. So please take a second to scan this QR code. It's with great honor and pride that I introduce tonight's speaker, a lifelong friend of mine and a lifelong member of this community. One of the earliest members of this community, and he continues to be a change maker in the Southern California Shia community as he establishes Southern OC's first ever Islamic school. So we're really grateful to him for all of his effort and all of his work. He's an all-around genius. He's embarrassed. But a graduate of AI and education from Carnegie Mellon, a current professor of UCI in the School of Education, and again, one of the founding members of ARC Academy. Please help me introduce Brother Shayan Durudi to the podium with your loudest salawat.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First of all, thank you so much for that. That's probably the nicest introduction I've gotten, if only it were true. But that was very, I don't know how you even came up with Changemaker. I mean, those are, I feel like you use ChatGPT, but, okay. Yeah, very nice introduction, but maybe for someone else, inshallah. Okay, so, where's the slides? I'm sure I can find it, but I don't want to mess with your computer.
Hey guys, it's me, Cheyenne. Here to fix your computer problem. Okay.
Oh, there we go.
There we are. There you are.
Thank you. All right, so today I want to talk to you about this topic, ring structure in the Quran. How many of you are familiar with ring structure or ring theory, narrative ring structure? Okay. A couple of people. How many of you are familiar with this? Well, okay, I mean, it's going to be less than the number of people who raise their hand. If not, then we have an issue. But how many of you are familiar with ring structure in the Quran specifically? Okay, so same people. Okay. So the concept of ring structure is I mean, this concept was studied outside of the Quran, but it's been applied to the Quran. So before I get into what it is, let me just start with an example. So let's start with Ayat al-Kursi. And hopefully many of you are familiar with this ayah. This ayah is one of maybe the most, if you single out a single ayah in the Quran, you say, what's like the most, other than Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, what is the most prominent ayah, or an ayah that a lot of people memorize on its own right? A lot of us obviously know Surah al-Fatiha, but that's multiple ayahs. It would probably be Ayat al-Kursi, right? And why? I mean, a lot of people recite it. In what context do people often recite Ayat al-Kursi? Yeah. Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead. Protection. Okay. What were you somebody? I was going to say okay. Yeah, they're related, right? You probably want protection. So yeah, a lot of times it's recited, or it's even not just recited, but it's a lot of people hang it in their houses or in their cars as a form of protection. For for in the car, you want to drive safely. Sometimes for, protection from evil eye and things like that. So it's often used in that context. A lot of people memorize it because, it's like great to have like a quick, ayah you can recite for protection. But does anyone feel, I felt this way, that, they don't really necessarily know why is this ayah like the most important? Why is this such an important or powerful ayah? Does anyone feel that way? It's not necessarily clear. I mean, there might be some things in the ayah, that stand out to you, right? But the ayah is pretty long. It's pretty long. But like probably at the, after you get through half of it, and I'm speaking for myself. You're like, okay, I don't know why am I reciting this? Well, I recite it because I've been told to, but maybe you don't know. At least that's how I sort of felt, right? And I felt maybe embarrassed to admit that. But I'm not alone. I mean, we have a Hafiz of the Quran saying maybe, sort of. So it's not like, maybe it's that way. So I hope what I'm going to talk about today, maybe it will give you unless you've seen this before, which maybe some of you have at least, it might give you a little bit of a different way to view this ayah. Okay, so let's go through it line by line. And by line, I mean the ayah actually naturally divides up into 9 sections. And if you look in the Quran, there's, the Quran has rules for where you can stop reciting. So there's actually 9 parts, if I'm not mistaken, where you can stop. And so these are the 9 sections. So can someone help recite the first section for me? Someone wants to volunteer? Yes, go ahead. Good. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. By the way, before I continue this, I want to say thank you for Brother Mehdi for such a beautiful recitation. I mean, we're talking about the Quran. What a beautiful way to begin with such a heartwarming recitation. So thank you so much. And the Quran, today I'm going to talk about the content of the Quran, right? But we're often going to talk about it, the English. But I mean, I think part of the real beauty of the Quran is just hearing it recited in Arabic, in the way it should be recited, of course. But for simplicity in my slides, I've mostly, for the most part, included the English. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum. Allah, there is no God except Him. The way it's written might be confusing. So it's saying Allah, and then it says there's no God except Him, is the living one, the all-sustainer. So Allah is the living one, the all-sustainer. This part of the ayah is very, I think, very clear. It has the essence of Islam and one of the main messages of the Quran, which is Tawheed in it, right? Saying there's no God except Allah. So I think so far, hopefully, we understand, and it's referring to 2 of His really, very powerful attributes: Al-Hayy, the one who is alive, the living, right, and Al-Qayyum, the all-sustainer, or this sometimes I think is translated as. Well, I'll just keep this one. There's different ways to translate that word. By the way, the translations I'm using here is from Qara'i. I've made some small modifications, just in case you're wondering. Okay. The second part of this ayah, so we're just going to go through it for now. Does someone want to read it for me in Arabic? Yes, thank you. لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم. Neither drowsiness befalls him nor sleep. Okay. We'll continue. So again, what we'll see is this ayah is basically describing Allah, right? The third part, someone want to read it for me? Yeah.
To Him belongs.
Oh, okay. No, the Arabic, but yeah, go ahead. The English is fine too. It's actually hard. One of the things is, once you get far enough, you might have to go back and start from the beginning to remember. And I'm worried I'm going to have that problem. But you can also refer to the English if you know the meaning. لَهُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. Right? To Him belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is on the earth. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَشْفَعُ عِنْدَهُ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِهِ. Who is it that may intercede with Him except with His permission? يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُم. He knows what is in front of them and what is behind them. So again, it's continuing to describe Allah. But different aspects, not aspects, but different things about Allah, right? Thank you. I don't want to double check. Well, go ahead, recite it, please. Thank you so much. So, and they do not comprehend anything of His knowledge except what He wishes. And this is where the ayah gets its name from. وَسَعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. His seat embraces the heavens and the earth. And it's, there'll be a whole other lecture, and I'm not the person to give that lecture of what is the kursi, what is His seat, right? It's sort of, symbolic, but, not more than just symbolic, right? But there's, and people might define it differently. So we're not going to get into that here. وَلَا يَأُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا, and he is not wearied, he does not get tired by their preservation. So preserving them is not difficult for him, right? وَهُوَ الْعَلِيُّ الْعَظِيمُ, and he is the all-exalted, the all-supreme. Okay, so now that you saw this, is the ayah very clear to you? So this is enough? Okay. Well, that wasn't the point. So I just just broke up the ayah into sections. But what I want to illustrate is, what is the structure of this ayah, right? So if we look at the first line and the last line, they have something in common with one another. They're both speaking about Allah, and they're specifically highlighting two of His attributes. Al-Hayyul Qayyum in the first one, and Al-Aliyyul Azim in the second one, right? So they're highlighting two important attributes, and attributes of sort of the essence of Allah, right? The living, the sustaining, the all-sustainer, the exalted, or it could also be translated as the high, and the all-supreme, right? So they're highlighting four very powerful attributes of Allah. If we then go to the second section and the second to last section, they're both talking about the same theme, which is that Allah doesn't get tired, right? The first one says Allah doesn't get drowsy, He doesn't sleep the way we do, right? So if we compare to ourselves, right, it helps us understand, Allah's not like us, right? Of course, we know that, but He doesn't get tired. And the second part says specifically He doesn't get tired by preserving the heavens and the earth. Speaking of which, the third part and the third to last part are both about the heavens and the earth, and specifically the first part saying that they belong to Him. The second one saying that His Kursi embraces the heavens and the earth, right? Similar in theme, but illustrating different aspects of Allah's relationship with the heavens and the earth. And then we have two parts that talk about, interestingly, both of these have the word except in them, right? So it's saying, who is it that may intercede with Him except with His permission? So if anyone wants to do shifa'ah or intercession, which we hope to get, of course, on the Day of Judgment from the great individuals like the Ahlul Bayt, right? Of course, we know people do shafa'ah, but it's highlighting that no one can do shafa'ah. Even the Ahlul Bayt can't do shafa'ah unless Allah gives that permission, which we know He does, right? But this is highlighting that nothing can basically happen without Allah's permission. And this part says that no one has knowledge. No one has knowledge. No one comprehends anything of His knowledge except what He wishes, right? So both of them saying basically that we can't know anything, we can't do anything unless Allah wills it and unless Allah wishes, right? And then what's in the middle of the ayah? Anyone remember? He knows what is in front of them and what is behind them. And if you think about the placement of this in the very middle of the ayah, right? Referring to the front and behind. Of course, the meaning of the ayah is not referring to the lines, but we can think about how it's reflecting the symmetry of the ayah itself. Right? So does this give us a little bit, for people who haven't seen this before, does this give you a different perspective on Ayat al-Kursi? Like, wow, there's actually a lot of cohesivity. Before, you might say, it's just a bunch of different things, I'll just memorize it because I want to, drive safely, let's say. But now, as you're saying, wow, there's actually a lot going here, right? There's a lot, there's a lot of powerful message packed into this, and the structure of the ayah itself is deep. So when you're reciting it, you can actually think about that structure the next time. So when you get to that second half, and again, we get tired, right? Unlike Allah, we get tired. When you get to that second half and you're tired and you're just reciting it out of memory, maybe you can think about how it's actually reflecting parts of the ayah that you recited in the first half. Okay? Any questions about this? Okay, so this is Ayat al-Kursi. This was just a prelude to talking about this concept of ring structure. So this is an example of ring structure. So first let me talk about different kinds of patterns that might appear, not just in the Quran. This is general, these have been examined in literature. So if the first is parallelism, so this would be a structure where you would have a repetition A, B, C, A, B, C, and then you can have multiple of those, more of those. So a nice way to think about this is in rhyme, right? In poetry, I'm sure we've all learned this in school, that a lot of things rhyme like this, right? Where you might have like AB is common, right? Where the first line rhymes with the third line, the second line would rhyme with the fourth line, right? It doesn't have to be C. This is just an example, ABC here. It could be AB, it could be ABCD, etc. Is that clear? So, but it doesn't just have to be in poetry. It could be in thematically as well. So a book could be structured where there's part one and part two, and then something repeats that's similar to part one, something repeats similar to part two, right? Okay. Another kind of structure. So one thing to notice is parallelism has it's sort of a linear structure, but it's repeating. So you have linear structures that repeat. In chiasm, or a chiastic structure, you have something where it goes A, B, C, and then we have this C prime, B prime, A prime. Right? Or maybe here as well, I should have done primes, A prime, B prime, C prime. So what this means is that it repeats, but in a reverse order, right? And so this is basically what we saw earlier. Well, not exactly, but close to what we saw earlier with the Ayat al-Kursi, right? So it repeats, but then the order reverses and it repeats itself. And very similar to that is concentrism, which is what we saw earlier. A, B, C, and then here we have, let's say we have D, then C prime, B prime, A prime. So I put this X here because again, it could go A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then you have something in the middle, and then G prime, F prime, E prime, D prime, C prime, B prime, A prime, right? So the point is that there's, it goes in one order, and then it reverses, but in the middle, there's something that's standalone. So that's the difference between concentrism and chiasm, right? Both of these second two are examples of ring structure. And so they're referred to as ring structure. It has a ring. I'll show you why maybe we can think of it as a ring structure, but it's sort of like unfolding, right? We go towards something, then we reverse, and we come back. Any questions about this? Is this clear? Okay. A little bit more about ring structure. So let's take the example of concentrism. Every ring structure I'm going to give this talk, I believe, okay, for the most part, I think is going to be an example of concentrism. So remember, there's that X in the middle, that central, something central in the middle that's not repeated. Everything else is repeated, but it gets reversed in the second half. So this is also, there's a lot of names for this. It could be also called chiastic structure. We talked about chiasm earlier. Ring composition or ring theory. A lot of these names are used, so I'm using the term ring structure. And the idea is that, as we've already seen with Ayat al-Kursi, A and A prime share a similar theme. This could be in poetry as well. So A and A prime could rhyme, but what we're talking about here is in terms of structure, in terms of theme, and the message. So A and A prime share a similar theme. B and B prime share a similar theme. C and C prime, etc. And then X, what is the role of that X? That central line, or that central part, it doesn't have to be a line. The attention, the idea of a ring structure is that attention is drawn towards the middle. And we saw that with Ayat al-Kursi, right? If we were going, it's like you're going in from two different sides and then they converge in the middle, right? And what's interesting here is this is very different from how we typically read a book, right? We read it linearly. And one of the complaints people give about the Quran, as well as even as Muslims, sometimes we're reading the Quran and we're like, I don't get it. It's because it's a non-linear book, right? It's not, if you look at the Bible, for example, like Genesis, like the story of like, stories are given in very detail in a linear way, in a chronological way. Here's the story of the prophets, Prophet Nuh, right? We're going to go from start to finish. We're going to talk about like the whole genealogy of the prophets. The Quran doesn't do that. It'll give you a little bit of the story here. We'll come back to it later. We'll go to the early part of the story later, right? And even the chapters of the Quran, the organization is not very clear. People have a hard time with this, right? Is that true, or is it just me? How do you think? Yeah, sometimes I don't know if it bothers you, but sometimes you're like, I don't know how to read this text, right? It makes it difficult, right? Because we're very used to a linear structure. Now the thing is, people have noticed that ring structure is used very widely in older texts like Homer's I think the Odyssey I believe, or the Iliad use ring structure. Even the Bible or Old Testament and I think New Testament, people have applied the ring structure to, and many other older texts and scriptures. And I think maybe more recently people have started looking at it more in the Quran. And when I say people, I mean primarily a lot of these people are academics. A lot of them are non-Muslims. So unfortunately, it seems to be the case that Muslims didn't really, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but Muslims didn't really discuss this. And if you look at tafsir of the Quran, it's often focused just on the meaning. It's not focused so much on the structure, at least as far as I'm aware. And it could be the case that in the early time, closer to the time of the Prophet, people were just aware of this. This was part of the, people knew, the poetry was a big thing in Arab society. People knew about ring structure. They could see it, right, when it happened, maybe. We are very far removed from that. So at least this is, my speculation, I don't know. And so maybe they didn't feel the need to talk about it as much, right? But there are some places, I think, where people, I think, have noticed some of these things, like Muslim scholars. But in the past century, a lot of academics, again, some of them non-Muslims, have gone and started studying this in the context of the Quran. One that I'll be, a lot of the ideas I'm going to present comes from him, Raymond Farin. I believe he was actually a scholar of Arab, I think Arab poetry to begin with. He started studying the Quran and the ring structure in the Quran, and I think because after that he became Muslim, right? So in his case, he became Muslim. But some of them are academics who have a lot of respect for Islam and the Quran, but they're not necessarily Muslim. And now, I think after they did some of this work, now a lot of Muslims are going and starting to do more and more work to analyze the Quran in this way. And so what people have found is that, I mentioned to you in Ayat al-Kursi, I think that's a very well-known example of ring structure, but some, people are now investigating, they're saying ring structure is throughout the whole Quran. So it applies, as you saw in a single ayah, it can apply. It can apply in like a group of ayahs, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 ayahs. It can apply to a whole surah, which we're going to talk about in a moment. And it can even apply across the surahs of the Quran. So there might be ring structure even in the composition of the surahs. As we know, the surahs of the Quran were not revealed. It wasn't like Surah Al-Fatiha was revealed, then Surah Al-Baqarah. Surah Al-Baqarah was one of the later surahs to be revealed, right? Actually, most of the early surahs were revealed later. And so it's like, why even that's confusing. Why did Allah decide to put the Quran together in that particular order? So if we start to see a structure in the way it's compiled, then we say, wow, there's actually there's more to it than just an arbitrary, or maybe the longer surahs for whatever reason are at the beginning, and the shorter surahs are at the end. So here's my depiction of a ring structure. If you're wondering why it's a ring, I came up with this diagram, right? So you start with A, you go around the ring, A, B, C, D, E. Now here's the central message. Then you start going back. And if you think about like a line placed here, it's like a mirror, right? So D prime is reflecting D, etc., until we get back around to where we started. So that's how you can sort of think about ring structure. Now, so I mentioned that the Quran, the longer surahs are at the beginning, right? So how many have had this experience where you start reading the Quran, let's say it's the month of Ramadan, we start the Quran, you want to read 1 juz per day, and maybe you want to read the English, right? Maybe you want to understand the meaning, or if you don't understand Arabic, you're reading Arabic. You start with Surah Al-Baqarah, right? It takes a couple days if you're doing 1 juz per day. And some point by, maybe towards the end of the day, or, second day, you're reading maybe part of Surah Al-Baqarah, you're saying, what am I reading? Like what is the theme here? Called Baqarah, is it about the cow? Well, okay, a few ayahs are. But it's 286 ayahs. Why are all these ayahs together? Again, it's not linear, right? And so you might sort of, maybe you might lose motivation. It's like, why, maybe I want to go from the other end. Those short surahs, I can do those. I can handle those. They have a very, central theme. Usually, it's, 1 or 2 themes. I can understand that. But with Surah Al-Baqarah, how do you understand the surah as a whole? Because can anyone say, oh, this is what Surah Al-Baqarah is about? And just say, like, this is the theme of the surah. It's not a cow. I mean, the cow is part of, just one small part of that surah, right? So, but if you were to say, what is Surah Al-Baqarah about? Or what are some of the themes in the surah? Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the creation of Prophet Adam, the conversation between the angels and Allah and Iblis. So that, again, that's early in the surah. That's one of the things that comes up early in the surah. Yeah. Good.
One thing that shows up a few times is like stories of earlier prophets, earlier communities.
Good, yeah, stories of earlier prophets and earlier communities. In particular, which prophet is there? Prophet Musa alayhi salam. So that's a big part of the surah. So that's easy to remember, hopefully, the Prophet Musa's story. Again, not the whole story from beginning to finish. Actually, it's mostly about the story of Bani Israel after they leave Egypt, right? So, and addressing Bani Israel too. Yeah. So we'll talk about that in a moment. Anything else? Yeah.
The beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah talks about like the different types of people. So there are the believers, the disbelievers, and the hypocrites.
Good. But yeah. So the beginning talks about the believers, the disbelievers, and the hypocrites, and then it gets into the creation of Adam and the angels and Iblis. Okay. Good. So and then at some point we get to Bani Israel, and then at some point there's laws, legal, things about fasting. The ayahs about fasting are in there. So there's a lot of things in there, right? And Ayat al-Kursi is in there as well, right? Ayat al-Kursi. Does anyone know what ayah number it is? 255. 286 is the total number of ayahs. By the way, a lot of people, as an aside, a lot of people think Ayat al-Kursi is 3 ayahs, or recite 3 ayahs, 255, 256, 257 together. But I believe, the best of my understanding, Ayat al-Kursi is only referring to that one ayah, but I mean the other ayahs might be good to recite as well, and they're very powerful ayahs as well. But when we refer to Ayat al-Kursi, that's why we were talking about that specific ayah. Okay. So, let's do ring structure of Surah Al-Baqarah now. So we did it to a single ayah, and if we can do it to the longest surah of the Quran, then it's showing, okay, maybe there's something to this ring structure idea, right? Okay, so what are the themes at the beginning and the end of the Quran? Now, I will admit there's many ways to do this. So one of the things is, how do we actually divide up a surah? People might disagree. Somebody came up with this, so I believe this mainly, although other people have done, tried to come up with the categorization of Surah Al-Baqarah, but the first person that I know of who's actually applied a ring structure to it is the individual. This is one I was mentioning, who became Muslim, Raymond Farin, who was an academic who became Muslim. He has a background in Arabic literature, Arabic poetry. So this is his division, but other people have refined it. He even changed after some time. Like if you read the original paper where he talks about it, it was a little bit different. Over time, they said, okay, the exact division of these sections is going to vary. This is 286 ayahs, so it's not like a clear cut. Okay, this is the Quran doesn't tell you this is part A, this is part B, this is part C, right? So there has to be some interpretation. So I'm asking you for now to take my word for it, but you can go and study it yourself and see if you believe it or not by reading the whole ayah, whole surah. So when you read the surah, if you want to read it, maybe during the month of Ramadan, you want to take a closer look at Surah al-Baqarah, not just trying to race to finish it, but actually taking a look, you can see how well this lines up with your experience of reading the surah. Okay, if you're reading it, if the translation, or if you understand the Arabic. Okay, so the first part was already mentioned, right? Believers and disbelievers, right? And we can classify disbelievers into different, the mushrikeen, the hypocrites, right? Different groups. So that is one of the main themes in the early ayahs of the Quran. And then it talks about Allah's creation and knowledge, so the creation of Adam and his knowledge. In that story, it's about Allah's knowledge, how Allah knows what the angels don't know. Allah teaches Adam the names, right? So there's a lot about Allah's knowledge. And there's also some parables, very, very strong parables, and especially parables for the disbelievers, right? And actually, maybe it was for the hypocrites, especially. And the end of the surah, the last like 30 or so ayahs, again, it's talking about believers versus disbelievers. And the context is a little bit different. Like some of it is about the prophet Dawood, David, the story of David and Goliath, right? But it's about this battle. And the context of that's interesting because this is a time where the Muslims were getting ready, I believe, for the Battle of Badr. So it was referring to that as this small army defeating this greater army of disbelievers, right? To motivate the Muslims, right? So that's coming here. This theme of believers versus disbelievers. This theme of Allah's creation and knowledge, right? Again, in different form. It's not talking about the creation of Prophet Adam, but talking about Allah's creation. Verses talk about Allah's creation. Many verses talk about Allah's knowledge. If you just do a search for words like ilm or words related to knowledge, you'll see many of ayahs at the end of the surah will come up referring to Allah's knowledge, but not throughout the whole surah, right? In the beginning and the end, in different contexts, but it's talking about Allah's knowledge. And then there's also parables, very strong parables, like the parable of giving charity, and how it's like sorry. Oh, I think I was thinking of the one. Maybe you're talking about saying this. It's like a stalk of wheat with like sevenfold. It increases manyfold, right? Very vivid parable at the beginning of the surah and the end of the parable. Very vivid parables, but in different about for different purposes, right? Okay. Part B is Moses delivers law to the children of Israel. This is a large section of the surah, as I mentioned. A lot of this surah, around 80 ayahs. And if you actually look at the number of ayahs in this case, it's around 40 ayahs for the first part and around 30 for the second part. And again, we have around 80 ayahs for part B and around, someone do math, 70 ayahs for part B prime. So they're quite comparable also in length, at least in terms of number of ayahs. Moses delivers the law to the children of Israel, to Bani Israel, right? And this part of the surah largely is actually addressing Bani Israel. Part B prime, the law is delivered to the Muslims. This is where the legal ordinances come to the Muslims. So we see in part B, it's addressing the prior prior prophets, especially focusing on Prophet Musa and Bani Israel. And here it's addressing the Muslims and giving the law to the Muslims. And actually, if you look at, like, for example, the expression Ya Bani Israel, it comes up only in this, well, not just in that part, but only in the first half of the surah we see. And Ya ayyuhal mu'mineen, thank you. Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu comes up, I believe, maybe for the most part, at least only in the second half, and I think primarily in this section of the surah. Right? So we see a shift in the audience. The Muslims are addressed in the first part, but it's still about Bani Israel when they are addressed. And much of the ayahs, I think, Bani Israel is addressed. So we see a shift in the audience of the surah here. And again, that might seem like an incohesive, why is it just shifting? But as we see, there's actually, there seems to be a structure to it. Part C, Prophet Ibrahim is tested, right? And Prophet Ibrahim and Ismail build the Kaaba, right? So it's about basically, it's the story of Prophet Ibrahim and the building of the Kaaba. Part C prime, it talks about the Muslims being tested, specifically the ayah where it refers to when we deal with death and loss of life and trying to remember the other things that are mentioned, like wealth and I think farm or crops, I think. Yeah. That the believers are tested, but the believers are patient in their testing, right? Like how, it doesn't refer to Prophet Ibrahim, but similar to how Prophet Ibrahim was patient, right? And they say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, right? So it refers to that. And then shortly thereafter, it talks about Safa and Marwa, right? Again, connected to the Kaaba, but now in the context of the Muslims and the Muslim rites of Hajj, right? So we see this like cohesion between the building of the Hajj, right? From the prior, prophets, from specifically from Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail. And now it's the time for the Muslims to complete the Hajj. And then in the middle, we have this few ayahs, 10 ayahs, right? And the themes here are about the Qibla's change in direction and the Muslims being a middle nation. And this phrase, middle nation, is already like, it's interesting how again, like we saw with Ayat al-Kursi, it's sort of paralleling the structure. It's in the middle of the surah. Literally the middle, it's 286 ayahs. The middle ayah, there is no middle ayah in 286, it's even, but 143, 144 would be exactly, in terms of, not necessarily in terms of the length, because some ayahs are much longer than others, but in terms of the number of ayahs, 143 and 144 would be the middle of this surah, right? Which is, we'll talk about those ayahs in a moment. Right? And it's talking about the Qibla's change in direction. So the first half, basically, we can summarize, except for part A, part B and part C, is about the prior communities, prior prophets, right? And giving messages for the Muslims, for the believers, but from those communities. Then all of a sudden it's talking about the Qibla. So where was the Qibla before? Al-Aqsa, yeah, or Jerusalem, right? And then it changed to the Kaaba, right? And already we're talking about the Kaaba before and after that, right? We're talking about the Kaaba, Safa and Marwa, right? Now suddenly we're switching, right? We're switching direction. Now it's talking about the Muslims, right? Do you see that? There's some like powerful, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm getting goosebumps right now. It's just thinking about that, right? And in a surah that otherwise would be like, oh, okay, I don't even know how to get through this surah. There's just a bunch of different things in it, right? But we underestimate the power of Allah to, and there's probably so much more to it. By the way, in this talk, I can only give you a sampling. If you actually look at the analysis of the structure, each of these, pretty much, I think almost, if not each, I think each of these, but if not almost each of these has a ring structure within it as well. So it's like an onion, right? I mean, like, there's layers of rings, right? There's layers of ring structure. I'm only giving you the broad, the big picture. So there's a lot more to this, right? Okay, so let's go to the middle. Oh, before I go to the middle, we can actually see some interesting parallels. So if we look in one of the ayahs, towards the end of part B, actually I think 7 ayahs before the end of part B, and in this case we have, only maybe around 5 ayahs after the part B prime, we have the same phrase appearing. So the first ayah says, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ فَأَيْنَمَا تُوَلُّوا فَثَمَّ وَجْهُ اللَّهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَاسِعٌ عَلِيمٌ. Right? And then in this part B prime, we have this ayah, لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Right? So both of them are saying, I mean, they're saying different things, but this one's saying to Allah belongs the east and the west, right? And then it's talking about basically, well, maybe someone can help me with translating this, but.
Wherever you turn, you're going to find God.
Thank you, yeah. Wherever you turn, you're going to find God. So it's saying it's not about direction. It's not about east or west. To Allah belongs the east or the west. Wherever you turn, you're going to find God, right? And we see here similar message, right? The piety is not in turning your face to the east or the west, right? So basically, it's not about if you're facing east or west. I mean, what is this talking about? It's probably referring to the context of, again, the Qibla. And then here in the middle, again, we have قُلْ لِلَّهِ الْمَشْرِقُ وَالْمَغْرِبُ, right? And say to Allah belongs the east and the west. So we have, as we're getting to this middle, it's saying, it's not about the direction. It's not about the east or the west. Turning your face to Allah, and part of this probably, again, people are, either complaining about, or the Jews mocking them about the Qibla being a certain direction. But the Qibla, then the Qibla does change. But the point is, it's not like, oh, now you're like doing the right thing. You're always doing the right thing. It's always that you're worshiping Allah. Allah chooses that direction, but ultimately, the idea is that you need to follow Allah's ordinances. It's not about whether you're facing east or west or north or south. In that case, it's actually more north or south, right? So that's interesting. So we see that parallel as well. Now, let's go to this middle. So I mentioned this middle nation. Again, this is in Ayah 143, right in the middle of Surah al-Baqarah. Thus, we have made you a middle nation that you may be witnesses to the people, and that the apostle may be a witness to you. We did not appoint the Qibla you were following, but that we may ascertain those who follow the apostle from those who turn back on their heels. It was indeed a hard thing except for those whom Allah has guided. And Allah would not let your prayers go to waste. Indeed, Allah is the most kind and merciful to mankind. So this is the middle, and then let's look the next ayah, right? I said the middle would be 143 and 144. We certainly see you turning your face about in the sky. This is the ayah just, this is not the ayah. We will surely turn you to a qibla of your liking, so turn your face towards the holy mosque. And wherever you may be, turn your faces towards it. Indeed, those who are given the book surely know that it is the truth from their Lord, and Allah is not oblivious of what they do. So again, at the very middle of the Quran, it's talking about these two themes about, actually in the same ayah, it's talking about how it's a middle nation, the Muslims being a middle nation, right? And how the Qibla direction had changed, so turn your faces towards Allah, right? And it's a powerful message too. So it's this message of, it's not really, the Qibla is part of it, but really it's about worshiping Allah at the end of the day, right? It's about worshiping Allah and the community of believers. Any questions about this? Yeah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Do you know what middle nation means?
Yeah, that's a great question. Does anyone else want to answer that? I don't want to give the wrong interpretation. But I can.
I mean, it could be like geographically you're in the middle nation.
So I think, let me double check, because I think it's referring to like, comparing to the Jews and the Christians. Yeah. Yeah, and it being like, but I don't want to give a wrong interpretation of it. So that's a very good question. I should have prepared that. But I want to just check something really quick. Okay. In the middle section, so this is from the book that I'm drawing from. The middle section, also the Muslims are identified as a median community. That's the phrase that's used here. Here the chapter highlights Islam's position among the revealed religions between the formalism of Judaism, as illustrated in part B, through the example of the cow, and the exaggerated belief or doctrinal extravagance of Christianity, highlighted in the previous section. Islam is positioned as a golden mean. Okay. That's the way it's described here. That's what I thought, but I didn't want to, I don't want to say that. And of course, this could also be, I'm sure that phrase might have different interpretations, and so do your own research, but that's how it's been described. Any other questions? Yeah.
I just want to add that the word wasata for middle
Yeah.
can also mean like balance.
Yeah.
An extension to middle nation.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that goes back to the. Thank you for sharing that. That goes back to this message that Allah, Islam is balanced, right? It's not too extreme in either of these directions, like overly, trying to follow these, just following the rules and the form and not really abandoning the significance, or like erring on the side, that Christianity did, right? Abandoning the law, but just focusing on certain beliefs, right? And false beliefs of that. By the way, this golden mean, it's interesting. By the way, this is totally, again, a tangent. But did you know the Kaaba, the latitude of the Kaaba, or actually the latitude of Mecca, the latitude of the Kaaba is almost the golden ratio. Like if you look at the distance from the north to the Kaaba and the distance from the Kaaba to the south, it's almost exactly the golden ratio. I think the exact golden ratio would be like slightly below, or either somewhere in or somewhere outside the city of Mecca. That's also interesting. I'm not saying that's what this ayah is about, but yeah.
Speaking about the golden ratio, when you say a ring structure, does that also have any convergence with the Fibonacci spiral?
Don't think so, but I haven't thought about that, but I don't see what it would be, but maybe there's something there that I don't know about. But thanks for asking.
Working off of that, so the Fibonacci spiral is perfectly symmetrical, right? And that's ultimately what makes it beautiful, right? It's it ultimately gives an object beauty, right? But what's beautiful about the ring structure is that similarly, it's perfectly symmetrical in its structure, and that's where.
Yeah. So, but I think mathematically, I'm not sure if there is, but yeah, in terms of you're right, aesthetically, yeah, I would see commonalities. I think it's the idea of symmetry, right? And symmetry and sort of a perfect kind of form. Thank you for good comments. Any other questions or comments? I know there's a lot of information here, and again, please check this for yourself. And there's different ways of even dividing up these sections. So you might be like, well, maybe this is just maybe someone came up with this, and it's, it could be misleading because I'm taking a 286 ayah surah and just giving, oh yeah, this is the theme of this section, right? You have to verify that for yourself. And I actually changed it a little bit from the one I found to make it, what I thought might make more sense, and it actually matters for the characterization of these ayahs. But I don't know. Ultimately, Allah knows, and there doesn't necessarily have to be one single way of dividing these ayahs. We know there's probably many layers to this, right? Many different ways of even reading these ayahs, dividing them up. There could be layers that many people haven't even noticed before, right? So it's not to say that this is the canonical way of reading the Quran or anything. But it does help us appreciate the beauty of the Quran. And one thing I didn't mention is, when it comes to the, we often hear the Quran is a miracle, the miraculous nature of the Quran. And sometimes we also hear, well, to really understand that you have to know Arabic, right? You have to know the Arabic language, the word choice of the Quran, which I totally agree that if you do understand the Arabic, right? For those who really do, like there's like a tremendous beauty to it. Even like listening to the recitation, it's very powerful. It has a powerful effect, especially, even if you don't understand the meaning, but if you do understand the meaning, it has a very powerful effect. Here, what I think is really nice is, even if you don't know any Arabic, and you're reading the translation of the Quran, you can appreciate the structure, because it's structural. There are certain aspects that looking at the word choice, and that's why I highlighted some in Arabic, looking at the word choice actually makes it more interesting and deeper. But I think even if you know Arabic, I think you can still appreciate this. Any questions? Okay, let me go through. If you're tired, I can stop. I know, we do get tired and sleepy. Unlike Allah, we do. So I can, Okay, so I'll continue for now. Let's go to a third example, Surah Yusuf. Now this is interesting. I talked about how the Quran is not linear, but here's an example of a linear story. Right? Surah Yusuf, it's from start to finish. It's the story of Prophet Yusuf, right? How many are familiar with this story of Prophet Yusuf? Okay. So yeah, it's a very linear story. Do you know how the Quran describes this story? In one of the first few ayahs in the surah. The best of stories, right? Allah is saying it's the best of stories. That's a powerful thing, right? And so, in Iran, they made a TV show that got really popular. Like, well, this is the best of stories. We can make a lot of money. I mean, I'm not saying that's why they did it, but, we should be able to make a really good TV show that's better than all the other ones, right? Did anyone watch the TV show? Was it really good? I watched parts of it. I didn't watch the whole thing. It was really good. Yeah. They did have to, I think, take some creative license. Like, I don't think everything in the show was in the Quran, I think some of it was actually taken from other, maybe like, I don't know, the Bible or some other sources, I'm not sure, or historical sources, but, okay, so it is how many of you think it is like a really nice story? It is, it's a powerful story. So here, maybe you already know this, but I'm going to try to present the story now in a different way in terms of ring structure. So even though it's a linear story, it also can have a ring structure. So ring structure doesn't necessarily mean not linear, right? Okay. Has anyone seen this? A ring structure of Surah Yusuf? Okay, so hopefully this is something relatively interesting. Okay, well, the first part is maybe not that interesting, but if we look, there's an overall ring structure. Part A is the prologue, only 3 ayahs, and part A prime is an epilogue of 9 ayahs, all right. I'm trying to do my math. 10 ayahs, right? Okay, and so these ayahs are just actually very nice ayahs, right? This is the ayah that says this is the best of stories. It says that we reveal this Arabic Quran. And then these ayahs are basically concluding the surah, and again, very nice and powerful conclusion. And then the middle is actually Prophet Yusuf's story, right? So the beginning and the end are sort of like a universal message, and in the middle we have the story. So let's talk about the middle. Okay, so now the middle itself has a ring. And I think this idea of a prologue and epilogue, a lot of the ring structures that people apply to the Quran, a lot of them have this form. And if you see in the first few ayahs of many surahs, some of them, like in this case, Alif Lam Ra, right? It starts with those, in Surah al-Baqarah, right? It starts with the letters, these sort of mystical letters that we don't know what they mean, right? And then it goes to these very sort of deep and universal messages, and then it changes, and then it goes into maybe a specific story, specific theme, right? As we're seeing here. And then at the end, it gets back. Some of them begin with the glorification of Allah and will end with the glorification of Allah. Okay. So, Prophet Yusuf's story. So, what is the first part of this story? What happens at the beginning? Okay. He does, but before that, we're good. We're going to come to the well. Yeah. He has a dream. So here, I said you're a fact check. So here, I'll see if maybe we're going to outline the story together, so you won't need to fact check, but you can still look into the details. Okay, so dream. So that Muslim wasn't a plant. This is how the story begins. There's a dream, right? He has a dream. Does anyone remember his dream?
He sees 11 stars and the sun and the moon prostrating.
Yeah. 11 or?
Yeah,
that's right. 11 stars. The sun and the moon prostrating them. Good, thank you. And so, what does that mean? Well, don't answer yet. We'll come to that. Okay, because the Quran doesn't tell us at that point, right, what it means. Okay, so the second part. Oh, sorry, don't look. Oh, what was the second part? Well, okay, so maybe you saw it, I guess. So the brothers do a trick, right? Who are they tricking? The father, right? So what is the trick? Yeah, he got eaten by a wolf. By the way, does anyone know the name of the wolf in Surah Yusuf? I heard about this before. Well, there is no wolf, right? It's a trick. But maybe there was a wolf. I don't know. Maybe there was a wolf there. Sorry. So the trick was good enough there. Many centuries later, we're wondering about the name of that wolf, right? No, but maybe there was a wolf in the city, right? We don't know, or in the village. And we assume it was that wolf. So. But I don't know. I heard about this. I don't remember what the whole thing is, but some scholar was saying, like, talking about the name of the wolf in Surah Yusuf. Okay, maybe I'm not sure if it was meant to be a joke or not, but okay. So there's the brother's trick, and then there's the well. And by the way, again, each of these, I think a lot of these sections have their own rings, and I believe if I remember correctly, there's a ring structure in this section where the words wolf and well like has a ring form, and I don't remember exactly what it is, right? But like if you look at the way that those the ayah is referring to those words, like the wolf and the well. Okay. And then travel to Egypt, right? Prophet Yusuf alayhi salam is taken in the caravan and goes to Egypt. Okay, what's the next part of the story?
I think he is in prison right?
A little bit later. Yeah, but we're gonna get to prison. So what happens after this? What happens after he's taken to Egypt?
He gets sold on the market.
Okay, he gets sold, yeah. And then what? He's a servant. Okay. And there's a few ayahs actually. This part you might not. It's a very short part. There's a few ayahs that say that talk about actually. Just make sure I get it right. Sorry, one second. I had it here. Yeah, وَكَذَلِكَ مَكَّنَّا لِيُوسُفَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Right? It's basically saying how Yusuf got established in the land. Right? That's what it means. Right? And specifically, he got established in the household. You know, the people who purchased him on the market, he got established. And here it also talks about how in these ayahs. So this is just 3 ayahs, right? So this is maybe not a part of the story. It's almost like an interlude. I mean, it is part of the story, talking about how Yusuf came to prominence in that household, right? It says, I mean, I can even read you these. It's just 3 ayahs, right? It says, then they sold him for a trifling price. Someone mentioned that. A number of dirhams because they considered him to be of little value. The Egyptian that bought him said to his wife, this is a different translation. The man from Egypt who had bought him said to his wife, give him an honorable place, maybe he will be useful to us, and so we may adopt him as a son. Thus we established Joseph in the land, that we might teach him the interpretation of dreams. Right? So it's talking about the significance of the interpretation of dreams. Allah has command of his affairs, but most people don't know not. When he came of age, we gave him judgment and knowledge, and thus do we reward the virtuous. Right? So actually, this first half of the surah, if we look at it, it's actually pretty sad turn of events for her. We could say it's a series of unfortunate events for Yusuf, right? He gets, he's almost killed, but he gets thrown into this well. He becomes a slave. He gets sold, right? This is the one part that's a little bit happy. I mean, not happy, but it's God saying, okay, it's not completely sad. Look, we made him a prophet. We gave him interpretation of dreams. We gave him knowledge and judgment, right? So, there's gonna maybe we think it's gonna be a positive story, and then, right? Then what happens? Do things get better for Yusuf? Not yet. So this is the part where the woman, the wife of the man that took him in, right, attempts to seduce Yusuf twice in this section, right? And then also, I believe, this later ayahs are when, let me check. So when the other women find out, so then they come and they. So she gives them the knives, right? And they have the fruits and the knives, and then when they see Prophet Yusuf, he's so beautiful. Basically, he was so beautiful that they cut themselves, right? They cut their hands. So this is when that happens, right? And then what happens? And we're getting back to where somebody mentioned it. Prison, right? He gets in prison. Specifically, what happens here? So he's a prison. Oh yeah, sorry. So he goes in prison. In this section, the prisoners have dreams, right? His 2 fellow prison mates have dreams. They tell him about their dreams. Prophet Yusuf interprets them. But before he interprets them, he gives a sermon. And then the king has a dream, and Prophet Yusuf interprets the king's dream. Right? That's what happens here. Here we also see a ring structure, right? Within this, right? The prisoner's dreams, Prophet Yusuf's sermon. I mean, it's a little more complicated because we'll get it in a moment, but for right now, I'll oversimplify. The prisoners have a dream, Prophet Yusuf's sermon, and the king has a dream. And Prophet Yusuf interprets both those dreams. Right? So that itself is sort of a ring. Okay, now things turn for the better for Prophet Yusuf. So in D prime, They find out that, the woman who tries to seduce him, that gets, they didn't know about that before, so they identify that. She admits her guilt and asks for forgiveness, right? So we're coming back to the resolution of what happened previously. Okay. What about what's next? Actually, I don't expect you to know this, but same thing. Prophet Yusuf gets established in the land. Literally the same phrase that I read earlier comes up again. Again, 3 ayahs. So it's almost this other interlude, right? So if we actually go to ayah 54, it says, the king said, bring him to me, I will make him my favorite. So again, this is when things turn for the better. Then when he had spoken with him, he said, indeed, today you will be honored and trustworthy with us. He said, put me in charge of the country's granaries. I am indeed, this is 4 ayahs, sorry, I was wrong. Put me in charge of the country's granaries. I am indeed fastidious and well informed. Right? That is how we established Joseph in the land. So it's saying the same thing again, that he may settle in it wherever he wished. We confer our mercy on whomever we wish, and we do not waste the reward of the virtuous. So it has these universal themes as well. And the reward of the hereafter is surely better for those who are of faith and are God-wary. So again, this sort of like universal theme, both talking about the honor given to Prophet Yusuf and these broader themes for us as readers of the surah, right? And then what happens? Oh, good. You're catching on to he tricks the brothers. Yusuf's tricks, right? How does he trick his brothers? With the cup, right? The drinking cup. And you see like a well drinking cup, similar sort of symbolism there. And then the brothers are traveling now to Egypt. Flip of events, right? Earlier, Yusuf got tricked. Yusuf had to go to Egypt. Now it's his brother's turn. They go to Egypt. Actually, it's also a ring in the sense that they go to Egypt first and then they get tricked. So in Yusuf's case, he tricked and then they went to Egypt, right? So we have this ring structure there too. I just realized, right? Very interesting, right? And then what happens? You know how to read this now, right? The dream fulfilled, right? So what was the fulfillment of his dream? Who were the stars and the brothers and his parents, right? And the sun and the moon, yeah. Okay, so you see the ring structure? Does this give you a different take? I mean, already such a beautiful story, but now we see, and so again, the first half, it's sort of a sad turn of events for Prophet Yusuf, and then things go up from there, right? He gets established on the earth, he becomes, he basically has this very high position in Egypt, right? He's the one who's tricking his brother, he's in charge now, right? And then his dream gets fulfilled, finally, and then the story concludes, and then there's a beautiful epilogue to the surah. Any question about this? Is this interesting, helpful? Okay. All right, I'll give one last example. This is a short one. This is, wait, we're not done yet. Sorry, I told you that the center is important. So what's happening? Why is the center important? We're talking about just dreams, right? Okay. Oh, this appears weird, sorry. So these are a few ayahs. So ayahs 37 to 40, right? He said, before any food comes to feed, so the prisoners come and tell him about his dreams. Can you interpret them for us? I guess, word got around that he could interpret dreams, right? Before any food comes to feed either of you, I will give you its interpretation. Like, I'm going to tell you the interpretation of dreams, but wait a moment. That which I will tell you has been taught to me by Allah. I reject the belief of a nation who do not believe in Allah and disbelieve in the everlasting life. So this is a sermon now, right? I follow the creed of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is not for us to associate anything with Allah. Such is the favor of Allah to us and to mankind, yet most people do not give thanks. My fellow prisoners, say, which is better, many gods at variance, or Allah the One, the Conqueror? That which you worship other than Him are nothing but the names which you and your fathers have named, and for which Allah has sent down no authority. Judgment rests with Allah alone. He has commanded you to worship none except Him. That is the right religion, yet most people do not know. The central theme of the ayah of the surah is what? What is being conveyed here? What is the message, right? In Tawheed, right? The central message of the whole Quran, basically, is in this story. The story is about, Prophet Yusuf, right? So what's interesting, the Quran doesn't just give you these stories for like, oh, here's what happened to this prophet, here's what happened to this prophet, right? There's a point to it, right? And if you look at the point in terms of what, and you'll see this in the beginning and the end of the surah too, but if you go to the middle of the surah, maybe maybe the worst place you can imagine being, in a prison, right? Imagine, okay, that's sad, right? He's in the prison. He's using that opportunity to spread this message of Tawheed. So the center of this ayah story, we have this message of Tawheed going back to, the creed of his fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, back to the past prophets, right? And that you should worship none but Allah. And then it ends with this, that is the right religion, yet most people do not know. If you actually look up this phrase, this phrase actually appears, I just want to find the Arabic. Yeah, you can look up on your own time, you can look up this phrase, where is it? Do I have the wrong, I'm on the wrong ayah, sorry. Yeah, ذَلِكَ الدِّينُ الْقَيِّمُ. If you look up where that phrase appears, it appears only in a few places in the Quran. It's about it's very interesting actually if you look up, like very important messages when the Quran is talking about very important commandments and messages. One of which though is about how there's 12 months to the year. So you might wonder what that's about, but I think that's a story for another day. Okay, so this is a very central message, right? That's appearing here in the middle of the surah. What's interesting is right after this, he's like, okay, here's what your dreams were about, right? So it's like, I'll come back to your dreams before you even get food. But, and this is a good message for, like, you don't have to spend a lot of time giving a sermon, right? Just like 2 minutes, or 1 minute. Like, here's everything you need to know about life. Okay, here's your dreams. And then he says, don't forget me, but then the guy forgot him, right? So unfortunately, hopefully he didn't forget, though, this message, right, about Allah. And I'm sure afterwards, when he remembered Prophet Yusuf, maybe that made him think, okay, maybe Prophet Yusuf was really, onto something about worshipping Allah. Okay. Let's talk about Surah Al-Hajj. I'm going to just talk about a few ayahs. This is another example where it's not about the whole surah. This is just a ring structure in a few ayahs. This is something I just, when I was reading Surah Al-Hajj, I thought it was very interesting. But maybe it's just me. I think it's just an interesting example. So this part of Surah Al-Hajj is the part that actually talks about Hajj. The whole surah is not about Hajj. It says, and proclaim the Hajj to all the people. They will come to you on foot and on lean camels coming from distant places. So it's saying proclaim the Hajj. And then this is how, the Quran proceeds to talk about the Hajj. And so we can see, I'll point out the ring structure. So the next ayah says that they may witness the benefits for them and mention Allah's name during the known days over the livestock He has provided them. So eat thereof and feed the destitute and the needy. In this last ayah of this section, it says, for every nation we have appointed a right so that they might mention Allah's name over the livestock He has provided them. I'm using colors to point out how similar the wording is here, right? Your God is the one God, so submit to Him and give good news to the humble. So again, we're ending with this central message of Tawheed. It's not central here, but very central to the Quran, right? But we see this similar pattern of mention Allah's name and over the livestock He has provided them. The next ayah, and the second to last ayah of this section, then let them do away with their untidiness, fulfill their vows, and circle around the ancient house, al-Bayt al-Atiq. This is the only place in the Quran that this, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, is used, and it's used again in both these ayahs. You may benefit from them until a specified time, then their place of sacrifice is by the ancient house. So it's referring to the Kaaba. It's a special phrase used for the Kaaba. That, dhalik. And whoever venerates the sacraments of Allah, that is better for him with his Lord. You are permitted raising livestock except for what will be recited to you. So avoid the abomination of idols and avoid false speech. And then again in this ayah, that. And whoever venerates the sacraments of Allah. By the way, the word in English, we're translating both of them as sacraments of Allah. It's actually a different word choice. I think one is sha'air Allah and one is hurmat Allah, I think. So a different word choice, but conveying the same meaning. Indeed, that arises from the God-wariness of the hearts. And then the middle, as persons having pure faith in Allah, not ascribing partners to Him. What is the message here? Tawheed. Right, so we have again this ring. And these ayahs, you might not, it's very easy, I think, to just read past this and be like, okay, it's talking about Hajj. Okay, yeah, just Hajj. Oh, okay. Talking about livestock. Why is it talking about livestock again, right? And you just move on, right? Why does it come back? But then we see now, it's actually sort of unfolding and going, again, this ring structure that points to that center. As persons having pure faith in Allah, not ascribing partners to Him. Whoever ascribes partners to Allah is as though he had fallen from a height, it's an interesting parable, then is devoured by vultures, or blown away by the wind far and wide. Okay? So this example I think is interesting because it's like even the very words that the Quran is using, just a small bit of words can designate a ring structure. I mentioned even Prophet Yusuf's story, that could happen with the well and the wolf, right? That the words sort of point to a ring structure. So looking for these cues when you're reading the Quran, now that I've given you this toolbox, you can start to see, I don't want you to see rings when they're not there, right? You can try to say, oh, everything's a ring, right? But I think sometimes it just becomes clear when you're reading it, you see this the structure emerge, right? And it might give you a different way of looking at it. Or otherwise, when we're used to reading things so linearly, we might not see that. And I think this is all I have. Okay, sorry. Oops. Oh, I thought I had a slide with, let me see, with some resources, but maybe it didn't show up there. But that's all I have. Are there any questions about this or any comments? Yes.
When it comes to ring structure, how long has that been an idea? Is this new?
That's a good point. A good question. I think, as far as I'm aware, it's I'm actually not sure. I think it's fairly, I know people have been studying in the 20th century. I don't know if people were really studying before that. I think it's fairly new, but I could be wrong. I mean, maybe some people have talked about it before, but I think it's something that, people haven't been studying, all the time for 500 years. Everyone's been aware of it. I think it's something that recently academics in the West have been thinking about. So there's a book I'm looking up, Thinking in Circles, an essay on ring composition. It's from 2002, or that talks about this. But I'm not saying that's where it originates. But yeah, I think in the past 20, 30 years, a lot of people have been at least analyzing it. But I would have to check actually like when people first started talking about it. I'm not sure.
I have another question, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I noticed it does seem pretty new, and it seems to be developing pretty quickly. And that last surah you brought up was something that you found yourself.
Yeah.
How often do people find stuff like this?
So yeah, that's a good point. So I wanted to see if it's here now. Yeah, so here's some resources. Okay, so I'll mention that in a moment. So that's a good question. So this first one, this is where I'm drawing a lot of what I've talked about today, structure and Quranic interpretation. It's a book that you can, I don't know if you can get the physical book, but the Kindle book, you can just, I forgot how much it costs, but you can purchase and just read it on Kindle. It's fairly accessible, and it's not only about ring structure. So it's a study of symmetry and coherence in Islam's holy text. The other part, maybe there's another talk we can have one day, also very amazing. It's the pairs in the Quran. So first of all, we know, the Quran talks about pairs and how Allah created everything in pairs. But the fact that it applies to the Quran itself, that surahs come in pairs, so this talks about that. So how, of course we know Surah al-Falaq and Surah al-Nas. Yeah. Oh, okay, sorry. Okay, Surah al-Falaq and Surah al-Nas, they're a very clear pair. People recite them together. Surah al-Duha and Surah al-Sharh are often, we know that's a pair that are recited together. But even talking about even I think Surah al-Baqarah and Surah al-Imran, like two long surahs, how are they pairs? So they're pairs in the Quran. Surah Yusuf, which I talk about, and Surah al-Ra'd. So sequential ayahs are often have either similar themes or themselves have a ring structure where like the middle has some commonalities and the ends have commonalities. And again, some of this, I would say when I read this book, I don't agree with everything. Sometimes I'm like, I think it's a stretch. So I think we have to be intellectually honest when we approach this. We shouldn't just say, yeah. All of these are, these are analyses that people did. And you might say even the analysis I do of Surah Al-Hajj, maybe you don't believe it, right? Maybe you don't buy it. But in here, so some of it, I don't agree. I think, the author, for example, he's talking about he's interpreting some, even an ayah in the Quran that talks about the 7 oft-repeated, or the oft-repeated 7. A lot of people say that's Surah Al-Fatih. He says no, it's not, because he doesn't count the Bismillah in Surah Al-Fatih. So I don't buy that argument, right? So he says it's actually these 7 surahs in the Quran. So he's so you have to you have to analyze it yourself and see what you make of it. But I think it's a very, very interesting book, and that's where I got the interpretation of Surah Yusuf from, which I think for me was very fascinating. This one, so going back to your question, Heavenly Order. This is a blog that someone's writing, and this is someone who's basically, as we speak, is doing this analysis. Maybe he's already done, but I don't think so. He's trying to write a book about this. And every week, today I just got a blog post about Surah Al-Mujadala Part 3. Every week he sends a blog post analyzing not exclusively, but a lot of its ring structure. Here's the ring structure in this surah, and here's the ring structure in this surah. And I think a lot of it is, some of it's building on other people's analyses, like for Surah Al-Baqarah, but some of it is, I don't know if anyone's seen that before and this person's doing it. Again, is he always right? Probably not, right? And he says Allah knows best, right? But maybe he's overstretching some of these. But I think it's very interesting. And if so I think if you're interested, and you like to read things like, when Nima pops up, you like to read a short blog post, you can subscribe for this in the Heavenly Order. It's a nice way, or you could just go on his blog and read whatever, if you're interested in a particular surah, what he says about it, you can find that. So that this is happening, yeah, sort of as we speak. I just got an email today. I'll get an email next week. But and it says over 1,000 subscribers. So this has recently been catching the attention of the Muslim community. And then this third one, How to Read the Quran. That's actually how I first learned about it. This is a book by, again, a Western, I believe he's Christian, if I'm not mistaken, academic, Carl Ernst. But someone who very much, I think, has a lot of positive things to say about the Quran. He actually wrote this. I think he was teaching in class about Islam, like post 9/11, and he wanted to teach people what is Islam, because he realized people have all these wrong conceptions, and I think after that, I think that led to writing this book, and it's called How to Read the Quran. I think largely maybe for non-Muslims, probably a lot of non-Muslims taking courses like this, might know some things about the Quran that most Muslims don't, right? So it's unfortunate. We should be reading that too. I think it's a very interesting book. It's a little bit more academic though. I think the other two might be a little bit more accessible. But that book talks about some other themes as well. Talks about ring structure. But ring structure is a big focus in it. I hope that answers the question. But yeah, that's a great point. And so, yeah, you can go and read the Quran, notice things maybe nobody's noticed. And maybe some people have noticed, but nobody's documented before, right? So it's not to say that it's an original, discovery, but it's fairly original in that it might have never been written about before. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's only recently begun to be articulated in academic circles. Like the idea of chiasmus of structuring text and stories in this way, it goes back a very long time. Like Shakespeare plays in this way, and ABC.
Yeah. Did people analyze Shakespeare's text in that way though in the past? Or is that a recent thing? So yeah, so yeah, it seems like it's one of these things. There's things like this where in the past people understood something, and maybe they didn't really write about it because it was just part of the culture. As I said, maybe that was the case. Even maybe at Shakespeare's time, or maybe Shakespeare just came up with it, or he read Homer and was inspired by it. I don't know, but other people didn't really, catch on to it, or people didn't really write about it. And then recently, wait a second, it's not an accident the texts were written that way, right? So people clearly knew about it. But it's a good point. Maybe people have been writing about it, but it never really gained much traction until recently. Any other comments? And on the sister side, any questions, comments? Okay, Mohsen? Yeah.
So this is a very interesting topic, and it seems particularly unique because, if I'm understanding correctly, it comes more from the academic analysis than from the internal Islamic intellectual discourse, but from the seminaries.
Yeah, it's just.
What kind of interest do you have that led you to discover this? That's what I'm curious about.
So actually, it was this book, Carl Ernst's book. I bought the book. I don't remember how I got the book. I think I got it from if I'm not mistaken, from a used bookstore. If it's the one I'm thinking about in Pittsburgh, that one, I think it might be out of business because the person was selling manuscripts stolen from the library and stuff. It's a weird used bookstore, but I had a lot of Islamic books. So I hope, may Allah forgive me if these books are stolen property, but I got a lot of interesting Islamic books from that used bookstore. You can read about it, there's news articles. But anyways, and I had this book, and I saw, I was like, well, it's interesting, how to read the Quran. I want to know how to read the Quran, right? And I saw it said in the back of the book or something, they talk about ring structure. I'm like, what is that? I'm curious. And I was curious about it, but it was on my shelf for years. And at some point, I don't remember what it was. I just picked it up and I said, I want to know what this is. Is there something to this? And I was like, wow, this is much more profound than I thought. Some non-Muslim reading a book, ring structure. I don't know. So that's what got me interested. And then I was like, really, I think it might have been during the month of Ramadan. And I'm like, let me dig more into this. And that's how I found the other book. And just, I got interested in that. So it was by chance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have, would have probably never known. Maybe not chance, maybe, Allah put that in my hands through that bookstore. But yeah. Any other questions? Dr. Taghi, are you aware, did Muslim scholars, have they discussed this, to your knowledge?
The very old time indeed, but it didn't get any attention. Because some other scholars said, it doesn't, this is not relative to the word of Allah. But now it's very interesting because this is how you can prove that this is the word of Allah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And I think it's led people Raymond Farin, it's led people to that conclusion. And I think even other people are probably quite astounded because yes, people have applied this to other, the Bible. Well, you can say even in the Bible, that might be because it's, it's a corrupted version of a text that was from Allah, right? But some texts will have it. But I think the extent to which it's in the Quran, from what I've seen, I haven't looked exhaustively in other texts. It's very different. And this Surah al-Baqarah, again, it wasn't even all revealed at once. It's not like some, to say oh, Prophet Muhammad went and just, composed these ayahs together. It was revealed over time. some of the ayahs were later inserted. So the fact that that has this structure over a text that was revealed over such a long period of time, not even revealed in that order, I mean, I think that is amazing, right? And I think, yes, that points to the miraculous nature of the Quran. Yes?
Have you looked at like today's poetry? It's similar. That's why.
Yeah, I'm not, I haven't, yeah, do you have examples?
Even like certain rap,
Yeah, they have that ring structure?
they have the reef.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but that's probably over small like scale, right? I'm guessing, or is that like a long?
More on the poetry side, you see a lot of it.
Yeah, yeah,
And it makes sense because during that time there was a lot of poetry.
yeah. So I'm sure Arabic poetry has it. I haven't looked at that, but again, I think the scale at which the Quran does it, and like the, I think at least to me, I'm not an expert, but it seems like something like a lot more than I would imagine other texts doing, right? But I haven't looked into it. I mean, yeah, even in terms of rhyme. So like for this, I had noticed before this ring structure, and I thought it was interesting. Like places like in the Quran in Surah Al-Hadid, it says "Huwa al-awwal wal-akhir wal-zahir wal-batin." It says akhir and zahir rhyme, but then they're in the middle. And to me, I was like, oh, I was thinking from a Western perspective, I'm so used to like the rhymes being the second and the fourth, not the second and the third, and that stuck with me, right? So even in terms of rhyme, I think the Quran has that in certain places. And so yeah, I'm sure it comes up in poetry. I think poetry is a place that I would imagine. And you're talking about rhyme, or are you talking about meaning, in terms of meaning? Yeah.
Like you'll see all that things they mentioned that it applies to.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked into it, but yeah. So I wonder if like people who are just more artistic, just it comes more naturally to them, and it just wasn't really documented. Like maybe Shakespeare too. Like just, yeah, this seems cool, right? So he did it, but nobody really wrote about it or talked about it, or like people disregarded it. I think there was a quote I wanted to actually put here from Ar-Razi, where he did mention this for Surah Al-Baqarah, like how it's amazing the way, but he didn't get, I think, in depth into the structure of it as was done here, but basically saying how the beginning and the end have these similar themes, and this shows like sort of the miraculous nature. So it was, I think to some extent it was discussed, but doesn't seem like it was to a great extent. So only now I think people are starting to talk about it more and write about it more. Seems, yeah.
What makes the Quran unique is that it was orally transmitted, right?
Yeah.
So that's how can someone like maintain such a like perfect symmetrical structure over years of oral transmission. So that's what makes it unique. It's one thing for like Shakespeare to sit down and map out
Yeah.
Romeo and
Right.
Juliet to fit into a perfect chiastic structure
Yeah.
versus someone who's orally
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And over a text, like Surah Al-Baqarah, it's not like a linear story. So with like the story of Surah Yusuf, yeah, there is a linear story, but I think it's still like very interesting how it unfolds in that way. Whereas you can read it and not even notice that. I'm sure it was Shakespeare too, but for Surah Al-Baqarah, it's not like a linear story. There's a lot of things happening. The fact that it's like structured in this way, I think is very interesting. Yeah.
And to add to what Mustafa said too, like most of the popular franchises, most of the popular IPs that we see today, fit into a ring structure. Like Star Wars subscribes to a ring structure, Harry Potter subscribes to a ring structure. Where you'll see if you mapped out the original trilogy, for example, and put it next to the prequel trilogy for Star Wars, it parallels, like the exact same events happen at the opposite ends of the trilogy. So yeah, it's like it shows that like symmetry is like necessary
For good storytelling, yeah. Even if we don't, most people don't catch on to it. And I think that's still a theory. Like I don't think in Star Wars, because I don't think George Lucas actually said that is the case, but it's a theory someone developed, and it makes sense that he could have thought of that. But it's like we might not catch on to it, but it seems like good stories often do have that kind of structure. So thank you for sorry, I think he had his hand first. Go ahead.
Could you make more than one ring structure for a surah that's like longer and has more parts?
It's a good question. I mean, in theory, I think you can. And I don't know if people have, but in theory, because the themes that you're picking, so like, for example, one might be in terms of overall theme, but you might find other ring structures in terms of like word choice, right? And so maybe they're not the same, right? So that could definitely be the case. And I don't know if anyone's looked into that. Because I was thinking about this as well. I was thinking like, well, what if, you have multiple ring structures, or like, one ayah is part of a specific ring, but then there's another ring, maybe not for the whole surah, for a part of the surah that's different from that ring. I think that should certainly happen. I think at that point it becomes so hard for people to, the exciting part is, as someone reading the Quran, you can recognize new things that maybe other people haven't, and it might give meaning to you as personally. But for one person to go and like catalog all these, it might be too overwhelming. And at that point, you probably, maybe they're looking. You don't want to force it, right? You don't want to force something into a ring structure. I think it's nice when it comes naturally, like you just see it, right? And it has this beauty to it. But yeah, and also as I mentioned, where the boundaries of the parts are, people can debate. Like with Surah Yusuf, I think it's pretty clear because it's a chronological sequence of events. I mean, maybe you can divide it up differently, but I think it falls pretty clearly. In the case of Surah al-Baqarah, like people have given different boundaries for some of those sections. That's a great question. Yes.
Just remember the many musical masterpieces have a ring structure too. So it might be natural to many other parts, not
Yeah.
narrative or writing.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm not surprised. I mean, the same concept should apply there as well. Yeah. That's a great point. Thank you. And one thing I was thinking about too is like how we recite the Quran. I don't know if people have done this in terms of recitation of the Quran, but if, let's say we're reciting Ayat al-Kursi, if someone could recite it in a way that actually does the ring structure, like the melody used for the beginning and the end is the same, etc. I think that would be very interesting. So on that point, but I don't know if people have done that because I don't know if the people who are experts in the recitation of the Quran are also aware of this ring structure. Maybe some people are. I don't know. And maybe they have, and I mean I wouldn't know. But.
I think the idea is that many arts have this structure naturally, but conveying an idea like a divine idea in that form might be unique, and
Yeah.
the sense of Quran is also an artistic literature as well as the ring structure
And
chronological events.
yeah, and a message. I mean, it's trying to convey a message. It's not just art, right? So the Quran is unlike any other text. It's neither poetry nor prose. It's like it has a bit of both, and so it has this artistic aspect for sure. But the primary, and I know a lot of art is trying to convey message, but primarily it's meant to be a text of guidance and give a message. So to be able to do all of that, all these things at the same time, I mean, it starts to make sense why it has to be such a non-linear and I think there's other reasons for the non-linear of the text. I mean, it really gets us to think about it, right? I think that forcing us to think about it is very important. But it starts to make sense. Okay, there's a lot more to this. It's like this ocean that the more you go to, the more you can uncover from it. And again, I want to be wary of saying like, oh yeah, like just come up with whatever interpretation, whatever structure you want. Like that's not what I'm claiming, right? Of course, Allah knows best. But if you see something to the structure that helps you appreciate the Quran better, I mean, why not? I think that's only making you have more of a love for the Quran, more desire to read it, and I think that's a very strong thing. Sorry, there's another hand.
Yeah, going along with the same concept, if you memorize the Quran, a reciter would have to do the first few phrases and the last few phrases. Do you know if anyone has already done that?
Memorize the Quran in that way.
Just for the
I would doubt anyone that has. I mean, because that could be complicated for other reasons. But I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that would be possible? Because I think with Quran memorization, you have to be very careful to maybe in the past, maybe that is how people that helped them remember, right? I think that is one of the things they say. Like in oral traditions, ring structure was helpful because it could help you remember what's going to happen. In a weird way, I don't think for us it would, in living in this day and age, because we don't think that way. Maybe some people, maybe some artists do, right? Maybe some poets do, but I don't think, it would be hard for me to remember. But maybe, memory is actually a very interesting thing. So like maybe for some people's memory, that actually would help. I'll go over there and then, yeah. Yeah, so you'll preserve what was, yeah. And maybe some parts were actually revealed, like A and A prime were revealed, B and prime, I'm not sure about that, but, and then it was revealed in that way, and then when it was compiled, Again, I don't know if that's true, but I'm just saying it's possible. Yeah.
So working off of that idea of memorization, I had a theater teacher who genuinely told me that when she was part of her master's program and she was trying to where she was forced to learn all of Shakespeare's plays by heart, the events of them,
Wow.
she would literally map it out onto a ring because that would help her memorize the events because you would have them parallel. So if you could learn one half of the play, you could learn the other half.
Yeah, I can definitely see for memorizing like themes and chronology, that can be very helpful actually. Yeah, so I think rings, but in terms of memorizing word for word, like with the Quran, I mean, I don't know. Maybe in some parts it might be helpful because the words might repeat, right? So it might actually help. I don't think you should only memorize in that way, but I think it could maybe. But maybe you're like, no, you have to memorize this literally, otherwise you're gonna forget. Right? I don't know. It's memorization is very, I'm in awe of people who can memorize the Quran, mashallah.
The more I think about it, when I was memorizing Surah Rahman, it was the same concept too, where you could kind of tell the beginning and the end had similarity.
Interesting.
The verses within, not just from Ayat, but the other verses also are similar.
Yeah.
What are your analyses on Surah Rahman?
I mean, I haven't personally done one, but I do think actually, in this book it might actually have that, if I'm not mistaken. So I can point you to that resource, but I haven't done it. Yeah, I can check for you. I think this. Yes, I can. We can talk about it afterwards, but I haven't personally analyzed that. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you for your speech. Very informative.
Thank you.
The question I have, can you say with your background in AI, that will help to discover or uncover some of these patterns in Quran?
It's a good question. I had not thought about that. I think it could. I think, with just maybe at least like getting some clues, and then the person would have to go and validate, like, is there some way to like, pair up, because AI can analyze text much faster than human can, so it can look for like, just like give it, look at different like windows of the text and see if there's some parallels that repeat in terms of meaning or in terms of word choice. So that's very interesting. Yeah, probably it could if someone had, spent some time thinking about how to do that. But I also feel like, while I think that would be interesting because it would like, might reveal a lot that we haven't, I feel like there's a beauty to trying to discover that yourself as a person, or, have humans look into that. So, but that's a it's a fascinating question. Maybe I'll have to think about that more. Yes.
I just want to say thank you so much for talking about this because it's
Sure.
a very unique topic that I think a lot of people don't look into, especially mostly because I feel like a lot of us we just take the Quran as like just as it is.
Yeah.
But it's really interesting when you like start to dissect it and analyze things like this. I feel like it also like solidifies people's beliefs in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. But I would say I'm included in that group of people.
Wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you so much for talking
Alhamdulillah.
about this and bringing this to our attention.
Sure. Thank you so much for bringing that point. I mean, that was my hope. I'm not a scholar, so when I talk about something, I like to talk about something that I'm just like people aren't talking about. But maybe this will be of benefit to people. And I agree. I think seeing this, like as I mentioned, it might be hard for some of us here in the West to appreciate this miraculous nature of the Quran, right? And this helps us, at least one aspect. I'm not saying it's the only aspect here. It helps us see one aspect of it that I think can help solidify your belief and be more in awe of the Quran. And there's a lot more to it. I'm only sharing some examples. If you're interested, and these resources are there. But also, as you're reading the Quran, maybe again you'll start to see some of this as you read it yourself. So thank you for mentioning that.
Is there any way we can get access to this presentation?
I can, yeah. I can. If I give I gave the link, but if I give a PDF of the slides, would that, could that be shared?
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, then I can definitely do that. Sure. Anything else? Sorry, I don't want to be taking so much time, but everyone has questions, so you feel free to just tell me I'm done. I don't know what the time. No one told me what my time constraints are.
We're about there. We have
Okay.
more announcements done, so.
Okay, so I will step down. And thank you so much. I'm glad to hear at least some people benefited from that, and then I'm happy to take questions offline. Thank you.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Okay, is Zainab Sardi here? Please stand up, you're up. Oh, there she is. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
Assalamu alaikum. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.